My girlfriend sold my family heirloom without asking me, and I'm devastated. I'm not even sure where to begin because I still can't believe this happened. My girlfriend and I have been together for 3 years, and while things have been great for the most part, this might be the thing that breaks us. She sold a family heirloom that's been in my family for generations without asking me. She says it was for a good reason, but I can't even look at her right now. I feel betrayed, heartbroken, and honestly, I don't know if I can forgive her for this. For some context, the heirloom in question is a gold pocket watch that belonged to my great-grandfather. It's not just a random antique. It's something that's been passed down through the men in my family for over a century. My dad gave it to me on my 18th birthday, and it was one of the most emotional moments of my life. He told me it symbolized responsibility, family, and trust. To me, it's more than just a piece of jewelry. It's a connection to my roots. My girlfriend, Sarah, has always known how much the watch means to me. I've shown it to her a few times, and while she always thought it was cool, I could tell she didn't quite grasp the sentimental value. Still, I never imagined she'd do something like this. We've been living together for about a year now, and for the most part, things have been good. Sure, we have our disagreements like any couple, but nothing major until now. Lately, though, Sarah's been stressed about money. She lost her job a couple of months ago, and while I've been covering most of the bills, she's been trying to make ends meet by selling some of her old clothes and jewelry online. I supported her hustle because I knew she was trying her best. But apparently, her best wasn't enough. And that's where the pocket watch comes in. It happened last weekend. I was cleaning up around the apartment and decided to check on the pocket watch. I kept it in a small wooden box on my dresser, tucked away under some other keepsakes. It wasn't something I looked at often, but knowing it was there gave me a sense of comfort. Except this time, when I opened the box, it was empty. At first I thought maybe I'd misplaced it. I tore apart the dresser, then the entire bedroom. I even checked the closet, the living room, and every drawer I could think of. But it was nowhere to be found. My heart was racing and a knot of dread started forming in my stomach. The watch wasn't just lost. It was gone. That's when Sarah walked into the room. She saw me frantically digging through my stuff and asked, "What's going on?" "I can't find the watch," I said, barely able to get the words out. "The pocket watch my dad gave me. Have you seen it?" Her face froze for a split second before she quickly looked away. "Oh, about that?" My heart sank. "Sarah," I said, my voice low and sharp. "What happened to the watch?" She hesitated, fidgeting with her hands like a kid caught doing something they weren't supposed to. "I sold it," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I just stared at her, not sure I'd heard her right. "You sold it?" I repeated, as if saying the words aloud would make them less real. "Why the hell would you do that?" Her eyes welled up with tears, but I didn't care. All I could think about was the watch and how it was gone, possibly forever. Sarah started rambling, her words tumbling out faster than I could process them. "I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd be mad, but we've been struggling, and I didn't know what else to do. Rent is due next week, and I don't have any money left from the stuff I sold. I saw the watch in the box, and I thought it could help." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You thought it could help? Sarah, that watch isn't just some random trinket. It's been in my family for over 100 years. It's priceless. Not because of money, but because of what it means to me." She flinched at my words, but I was too angry to care. "I get that, okay?" she said, her voice trembling. "But I was desperate. You've been paying for everything, and I hate feeling like I'm just sitting around doing nothing. I thought this could buy us some time." I shook my head, trying to wrap my mind around her logic. "Why didn't you just talk to me?" I asked, my voice rising. "We could have figured something out together. Selling the watch behind my back, it wasn't just selfish. It was a betrayal." "I didn't think you'd understand," she said, tears streaming down her face now. "I know how much it meant to you, but I didn't see another way." Her words only made me angrier. "You didn't see another way because you didn't look for one, Sarah. You took the easy way out, and now something irreplaceable is gone." I turned away from her, my chest heaving with a mix of anger and sadness. I didn't want to say something I'd regret, so I walked out of the room, leaving her standing there in silence. I spent the rest of the day in a haze. I couldn't focus on anything. My mind kept looping back to that empty box and Sarah's confession. Part of me wanted to scream, and another part of me just wanted to shut down completely. I didn't know how to process the mix of emotions running through me: betrayal, sadness, anger, and disbelief. Sarah tried to approach me a couple of times, but I couldn't bring myself to talk to her. Every time I saw her, all I could think about was the watch, how my dad had handed it to me with so much pride in his eyes, how he'd told me it symbolized the trust and responsibility that came with being part of our family, and now it was gone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how my dad would react if he found out. He's not the type to get angry, but I knew he'd be heartbroken. The watch wasn't just an heirloom to him. It was a piece of our family's history. I couldn't face him knowing I'd let it slip away like this. The next morning, Sarah tried to talk to me again. "I know you're mad," she said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. Her eyes were red and puffy, like she hadn't slept either. "But I want to fix this. I'll find a way to get the watch back." "How?" I asked, my voice cold. "Do you even know who you sold it to?" She hesitated, and my stomach sank. "I sold it to a pawn shop downtown," she admitted. "I don't remember the name, but I can take you there." "A pawn shop?" I said, my voice rising. "Do you have any idea how hard it's going to be to get it back? They probably already sold it to someone else." "I'm sorry," she cried, her voice cracking. "I didn't think it would be this big of a deal. I just thought—" "That's the problem, Sarah," I interrupted. "You didn't think." Despite how furious I was, I couldn't sit around and do nothing. If there was even a small chance of getting the watch back, I had to take it. So I grabbed my jacket and told Sarah to come with me. "You're the one who sold it," I said. "You're going to help me fix this." She didn't argue, just nodded and followed me out the door. The drive to the pawn shop was tense. Neither of us spoke, and the silence was suffocating. I could feel Sarah glancing at me every so often, probably hoping I'd say something to break the ice, but I couldn't. I was too focused on the possibility that the watch was already gone. When we finally arrived, my heart was pounding. The shop was a dingy little place squeezed between a laundromat and a closed-down diner, the kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. Sarah pointed it out, and I parked the car. Walking inside, the smell of old leather and metal hit me immediately. The walls were lined with shelves crammed full of random items: guitars, electronics, jewelry, and a whole bunch of stuff that looked like it had been collecting dust for years. Behind the counter stood an older man with a grizzled beard and a skeptical look in his eyes. "Can I help you?" he asked, glancing between me and Sarah. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "A gold pocket watch was sold here recently," I said. "It's a family heirloom, and I need to get it back. Do you still have it?" The man raised an eyebrow and leaned against the counter. "I'd have to check," he said slowly. "When was it sold?" "Last week," Sarah chimed in, her voice barely above a whisper. He scratched his beard, then disappeared into the back room. The few minutes he was gone felt like hours. I kept tapping my foot nervously, glancing around the shop, hoping against hope that I'd see the watch sitting out somewhere. But it wasn't. When the man came back, he shook his head. "Sorry, kid, it's already gone." Hearing the words, "it's already gone," felt like a punch to the gut. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't even breathe. "Gone?" I finally managed to say. "What do you mean gone? Who did you sell it to?" The man shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. "A collector came in a couple of days ago, bought a few items, including the pocket watch, paid cash, no receipt. Sorry, but that's how it works around here." I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my anger in check. "Do you remember anything about the buyer, what they looked like, anything at all?" He scratched his head, clearly not too eager to help. "Middle-aged guy, kind of fancy-looking. Wore a suit, if I remember right. That's all I got." "A suit?" I repeated, disbelief creeping into my voice. "That's it? No name, no contact information?" "Kid, this isn't Sotheby's," the man said with a smirk. "People don't leave their business cards." I was about to lose it, but Sarah grabbed my arm. "Let's go," she said softly. "We're not getting anywhere here." I wanted to argue, to keep pushing, but deep down, I knew she was right. I glared at the man one last time before storming out of the shop, Sarah trailing behind me. Back in the car, I slammed the door and sat there, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. "I can't believe this," I muttered. "It's gone, just like that." Sarah's voice was small, almost timid. "We'll figure something out," she said. Maybe we can post online, see if anyone knows who the buyer is. Or we can check other pawn shops. He might have resold it. Her words didn't do much to comfort me. Do you even realize how slim those chances are? I snapped, turning to face her. This isn't just some lost wallet, Sarah. It's irreplaceable. You can't just undo this. Tears welled up in her eyes again, but I was too frustrated to care. I'm sorry, she whispered. I really am. I didn't respond. Instead, I started the car and drove us home in silence. The next couple of days were a blur of frustration and sadness. I couldn't stop thinking about the watch, where it might be, or who had it now. Sarah tried to help, suggesting we post about it on social media and local community boards. I wasn't convinced it would work, but I let her try. At this point, any lead was better than nothing. We crafted a post together, including a description of the watch and its significance, along with a heartfelt plea to anyone who might have seen it. Sarah posted it everywhere she could think of: Facebook groups, Craigslist, Reddit, even a local lost and found page. I hated that we were airing our personal issue online, but desperate times called for desperate measures. To my surprise, the post actually gained some traction. People started sharing it, commenting with suggestions, and even messaging us with offers to help. Most of the leads were dead ends, random people claiming they'd seen a similar watch at another pawn shop or in someone's collection. But one message stood out. A man named Greg reached out saying he thought he might know the collector who had bought the watch. According to Greg, this guy was a regular at local estate sales and antique shops, always on the hunt for unique pieces. Greg even had a name: Charles Whitman. Charles Whitman, I repeated, staring at the message. Why does that name sound familiar? Sarah, sitting beside me on the couch, shrugged. Maybe he's one of those rich guys who always shows up in the news for donating to museums or something. Maybe, I muttered. But if he's buying antiques around here, that's a start. Greg didn't have direct contact information for Charles, but he suggested checking with a local antique shop where he'd seen him before. It wasn't much, but it was the first real lead we'd had. Without wasting any time, I called the shop and asked if they knew Charles Whitman. The owner was surprisingly cooperative. "Oh yeah, I know Charles," he said. "He's in here all the time. Nice guy. I can give you his assistant's email if it's important." It was the first shred of hope I'd felt since discovering the watch was gone. Armed with the assistant's email, I crafted a message that night. I tried to be polite but direct, explaining the situation without coming off as desperate. I described the pocket watch in detail, emphasizing its sentimental value and family history. Sarah helped me fine-tune the wording, making sure it didn't sound too pushy. Here's the gist of what I sent. "Dear assistant's name, my name is my name, and I'm reaching out regarding an item that Mr. Whitman may have recently purchased, a gold pocket watch. This watch has been in my family for generations and holds immense sentimental value. Unfortunately, it was sold to a pawn shop under unusual circumstances, and I'm hoping to recover it. I understand that Mr. Whitman likely purchased it in good faith, and I'm more than willing to reimburse him for any costs he incurred. I'm just hoping he might be open to discussing the possibility of returning it. Thank you for your time and understanding. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you need more information. Sincerely." My name. I hit send, and immediately felt a mix of anxiety and relief. At least now I was doing something, instead of just sitting around feeling helpless. The waiting was the worst part. I checked my email obsessively for the next 24 hours, refreshing the inbox every few minutes like a madman. Sarah tried to keep my spirits up, but I could tell she was nervous too. She hadn't said much about her own guilt, but I could see it weighing on her. Finally, the reply came. The assistant wrote back, saying that she had forwarded my email to Mr. Whitman and he was open to speaking with me. She included his phone number and suggested I call him at a specific time the next day. The relief I felt was overwhelming. "This is it," I told Sarah. "This could be my chance to get the watch back." The next day, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone as the clock ticked closer to the time Charles Whitman's assistant had given me. I'd rehearsed what I was going to say at least a dozen times, but now that the moment was here, my palms were sweaty and my mind was racing. Sarah sat across from me, offering a reassuring smile. "You've got this," she said. "Just be honest and explain why it means so much to you." I nodded, took a deep breath, and dialed the number. After a couple of rings, a deep, measured voice answered. "This is Charles Whitman. Mr. Whitman, I began, my voice steady despite the nerves clawing at me. My name is my name, and I'm calling about a pocket watch you recently purchased. I believe it might have been sold to you from a pawn shop downtown. There was a brief pause before he replied. Yes, I do recall purchasing a gold pocket watch. It's quite a beautiful piece. What's this about? I launched into my story, explaining how the watch had been passed down in my family for generations and how much it meant to me. I admitted that it had been sold without my knowledge and emphasized that I wasn't trying to accuse him of anything. I just wanted the chance to buy it back. When I finished, there was a long silence. My heart sank, thinking he might refuse, but then he spoke. I understand the sentimental value of such an item, he said thoughtfully. I've always believed antiques like this carry more than just monetary value. They carry stories. I'd be willing to return it to you, provided we can meet and discuss it further. The wave of relief that washed over me was almost overwhelming. Thank you so much, Mr. Whitman, I said, barely able to contain my gratitude. I'll do whatever it takes to get the watch back. Just tell me when and where, and I'll be there. We arranged to meet at his office the following day. After hanging up, I turned to Sarah, who looked just as relieved as I felt. He's willing to return it, I said, a smile breaking across my face. We might actually get it back. For the first time in days, I felt like things were finally turning around. The next day, I arrived at Charles Whitman's office with a mix of nervousness and excitement. The building was exactly what you'd expect from a wealthy collector, tall, sleek, and intimidating. Sarah wanted to come with me, but I told her I needed to handle this alone. This was personal. A receptionist greeted me and escorted me to Whitman's office, a spacious room filled with shelves of antiques, each item meticulously displayed. In the center of it all sat Whitman, a distinguished man in his 60s with a calm and approachable demeanor. On his desk, resting atop a velvet cloth, was the pocket watch. Seeing it again made my chest tighten. I wanted to rush over and grab it, but I forced myself to stay composed. Mr. My last name, Whitman said, standing to shake my hand. I'm glad you could come. Please, have a seat. Thank you for meeting with me, I said, taking a seat across from him. My eyes kept flicking to the watch, but I focused on him. It means a lot. He gestured to the watch. I must say, it's a remarkable piece. When I purchased it, I had no idea it held such personal significance. Your email really struck a chord with me. I nodded, taking a deep breath before speaking. This watch was given to me by my father. It's been in my family for over 100 years, passed down through generations. It represents more than just history. It's about responsibility, trust, and the bond within my family. Losing it felt like losing a part of myself. Whitman listened intently, nodding as I spoke. I can see how much it means to you, he said. Normally, I wouldn't part with something I've acquired so quickly. But I believe this watch belongs with you. Relief flooded through me. Thank you, I said, my voice cracking slightly. I'm willing to pay whatever you need to make this right. He waved his hand dismissively. No payment necessary. Consider it returned to its rightful owner. Just promise me you'll treasure it as much as your family has. I nodded, overwhelmed by his generosity. I promise. He handed me the watch, and the moment I held it in my hands again, I felt an immense weight lift off my shoulders. I couldn't stop staring at it, running my fingers over the smooth gold surface and the intricate engraving. It was like being reunited with a long-lost piece of myself. Before I left, I thanked Whitman again, and he wished me well. Walking out of his office, I felt a mix of emotions: gratitude, relief, and even a little guilt. I knew Sarah's actions had put me in this position, but she had also helped me fix it. I wasn't sure what that meant for us, but for now, I was just happy to have the watch back. When I got home, I showed the watch to Sarah, and she burst into tears. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice trembling. I'll never do something like that again. I know I broke your trust, and I don't expect forgiveness overnight, but I want to earn it back. I didn't respond immediately. Trust wasn't something that could be fixed with a single apology, but she had helped me get the watch back, and that counted for something. It's going to take time, I said finally, but I hope we can move forward. Looking back, this whole ordeal taught me a lot about trust, communication, and forgiveness. It reminded me of the importance of speaking up when something doesn't feel right, and of standing up for the things that matter most. If you've ever had to fight to get back something you lost, I'd love to hear your story. How did you handle it? What did you learn? Share your experiences in the comments below, and let's start a conversation. And if you're in a relationship, let this be a reminder. Communication is everything. Don't let silence and assumptions lead to mistakes you can't take back.